The Fool represents the blank slate that exists as a person steps into the picture, the opening wide shot of a movie. This energy is one of anticipation and prospects. This stage, though, cannot last for a very long time. Shortly after his appearance on the stage, the main character will have to make a choice of some kind, and then this choice will have to be followed by many other choices. So at this stage, all actions taken will lead to consequences and define the future direction of an endeavor or an enterprise in major, though not necessarily instantly visible ways. The figure on this card appears either oblivious to or not worried by the cliff at his feet, which is taken as a sign that he is a brave risk taker. He can also be seen as a flat out fool, but the deeper meaning of this card lies in the rose that he's holding and his upward gaze. Together, they indicate love, optimism, and faith in the universe. Trust that things will work out and that all pieces will fall into place eventually. He is open to receiving guidance from the universe on how to proceed next. The first major arcana card, the Fool, represents the world of possibilities that are open and waiting to be discovered. The word itself consists of two O's or two zeros and is itself numbered 0, strengthening the idea that in the nothingness lie all future possibilities. The beginning, though devoid of actualities, is full of potentialities, and in this is its power. This card sets the stage for Act 1 to begin. The Magician card refers to someone who is dynamic, focused, and in charge of himself and his destiny. This figure has all of the tools he needs to accomplish his goals and takes action both in his mind and with his body to manifest that which he desires. The Magician is resourceful, intuitive, curious, and adventurous, and he moves ahead with purpose and focus. One might say that this figure has a remarkable level of power at his or her disposal, and anything is possible. The pure will, intent, intuitive prowess, and creative abilities contained in the figure give him the strength to survive, the drive to keep going, and the compelling urge to escape current unfavorable circumstances. When the original force of this card is understood, harnessed, and directed, the results can be awe-inspiring. On a more evolved level, the Magician illustrates the link between God and man. It is the umbilical cord that connects us to out there and thereby allows us to have hope and faith and to experience love. Intuition is the voice of the universe and connects us to the bigger picture whether we consciously realize it or not. When it refers to a person, this card can indicate someone almost overwhelming in terms of their personal power, creative abilities, and ultimate achievements, but this usually only comes after considerable experimentation with a variety of careers. When they do find their focus, usually later in life, it will often involve a unique or different topic, method, activity, or trade. The major arcana tarot card of the Sun also represents energetic creation and new beginnings. In fact, the Sun is the most sublime of all beginner energies. It's like a gigantic light bulb in the sky, without which the world, the people, the animals, and the crops would perish. The world would plunge into darkness and nothing would ever be right or normal again. The sun is the life giver and is the best example of the energy behind the original force. It allows us to survive, but this beginning is different from the magician beginning because it contains in itself the idea of cycles. The sun rises every day and sets down again, and this cycle repeats over and over again. So the new dawn indicated by the sun is one that is a part of a constant cycle of birth and rebirth. A beginning that has implied in itself the idea of an ending as the most natural course of events. In a similar sense, the Wheel of Fortune also carries the meaning of a new beginning, but it's a sudden, unexpected one that leads the course of events in an opposite direction, but it is a new beginning nonetheless. An original direction is being introduced into the picture. The overall tone of this card is one of unexpected change. It appears when one situation changes rather quickly, thus introducing something completely new into the picture. The wheel is ever turning, just like the sun is ever rising and setting. They both represent the ongoing theme of endings and beginnings that we all experience. The wheel speaks to starting new phases, dealing with new challenges, dealing with changes, adjusting to the surprises of life, the surprises that life can throw at you when you least expect it. All of these things result in necessary shifts in place or circumstance, be it for the positive or the negative. Pay attention that the four corner figures are all reading from what is called the Book of Life, in which all things are possible. On another level, this card is number 10 in the major arcana, implying the completion or the reward of some kind. The card for the High Priestess is full of secrets and sacred and sometimes dangerous knowledge, which is implied in the heavy book she carries in her lap. The Torah is often thought to refer to the tarot backwards with the T hidden. Torah is also found on the Wheel of Fortune. Some people believe it to be the Book of Law. The High Priestess is the female equivalent of the magician and holds much of the same mystery and magical prowess and powers, but her strongest sense is that of her intuition. In human form, she represents someone who is just as open to the reality that surrounds her as she is to the inner world of intuition and spirit. She is the two joined as one. She is the cover of the book and its contents, and represents the connection between units of two, specifically that of spirit and matter. Notice also that the number 2 is visually highlighted on this card, as the High Priestess sits between two columns, of which one is white and the other one is black, again referring to the two different worlds of the High Priestess. However, she herself is neither black nor white, because her truth lies in the shade between the two. The idea finds its continuation in the Justice card. This card also refers to the middle ground between two polarities, two opposite components of the law, innocence and guilt. Other ways of saying this are lies versus truth, or good versus evil, or right versus wrong, and notice again that the justice sits between two pillars. Justice's job is to discern the truth and to achieve some sort of balance, which is symbolically represented by the two plates that form the scale of balance, and in the sword held in the opposite hand. This card is another way of saying, as above, so below. Justice keeps things even and fair, down to the legal contract and the fine print, for what is printed may secret away a lie. The major arcana card, the Last Judgment, shows the Archangel Gabriel blowing a horn over the figures who seem to be standing in their coffins and who seem to be part of a graveyard. The card offers a second chance, another life, an alternative route. Another take on this card is that it offers the opportunity to rise above the limits of our human bodies and egos. Either way, judgment has two sides and reflects the duality of a situation. While justice deals with two sides of the right-wrong equation, the Last Judgment deals with two sides of the life-death equation. Does an endeavor have a chance of materializing, of rising from the ashes, of going forward? These are the questions. Right or wrong operate on the same plane. Life and death cross the realms of existence. In the Justice card, right and wrong are horizontal considerations, whereas in the Last Judgment card, the considerations life and death are vertical. The major arcana tarot card of the Empress represents fertility at its finest. Sometimes referred to as Mother Earth, she is often portrayed as pregnant, and nearby sits the symbol of femininity, which can point to an actual birth of a child, a relationship, or a project. Anything that is fertile and growing is her domain. When this card comes out, it indicates that a tangible, actual result is being generated. Most depictions of the Empress show her surrounded by budding or blooming flowers, healthy trees, and flowing waters, all of which are necessary to growth. It speaks to the combined energies of two elements that produce a third, rather special one, in this case a baby, which could be a child, a relationship, or a project. The Major Arcana Tarot card of the Hangman represents taking action to seize action, which is accomplished by voluntarily hanging upside down from a tree or a post. All the better to see the situation from a different angle and to take a time out in order to contemplate and regroup. This card points to stopping the ever active energy of creation, which is depicted in the Empress card, putting a hold on it or suspending it long enough to see things from a different perspective. It's worth to know that the number 12, which is on top of the card, signifies a completion of some kind. This figure has reached the end of one stage and is pausing before continuing on. The halo that surrounds the figure's head indicates new understanding and spiritual awakening, one that comes from stopping for a moment and trying to see everything that's happening, everything that has happened, all of the buzzing activity, to seize it for a moment and examine it from a different angle. The World card brings to mind the old saying that the world is our oyster, and this is indeed its meaning. There is a sense of balance in this card, which is reflected in the two wands that the lady holds and the two symbols of infinity, which can be seen at the upper and lower ends of the red surrounding her. This is the reward at the end of a long road. It offers success, travel, which is an excellent example of activity and buzz, and the perfect oyster opens to reveal your own perfect pearl. This is the last major arcana card, and it encompasses all previous activity and thought and identifies the conclusion to at least one chapter of life, which is generally seen as rewarding. It's interesting to know that the human body has generally ceased its development by the age of 21, and that legal recognition is afforded in many countries when one reaches the age of 21. This points to levels of completions and feelings of wholeness and acceptance, a new base from which further action springs. The World card resembles the Empress in a sense that it reflects a lot of activity, a period of a lot of action, but it is a different action, not the one that is related to generating a tangible result, to creativity and productivity, but the buzz and the energy that comes from having completed something and being completely open to start planning something new, being happy and celebrating the completion of something. The emperor is the ultimate father figure and provides and personifies rules, authority, law, routine, reliability, and solid advice. In other words, he is the foundational, wise, and grounding energy and is not one to be challenged. This man has seen the world and knows its truths. The confident, assured, and relaxed attitude of the bearded man who sits upon his throne as though it were an extension of himself speaks to his experiences just as his armor speaks to the past history of fighting the good fight. The throne he sits at is a reminder of form, dependability, routine, safety, law, proper procedure, stability, and durability. The conventional number 4 of today is representative of the hard worker, someone who is practical, logical, productive, and protective. The pure 4 is grounded energy. It's firm and solid. Think of the 4 seasons, the 4 directions, the 4 wheels of a car, the 4 legs of a chair, the 4 corners of a house. The image of the ram that often accompanies him is yet another verification of the strength, determination, and leadership that the emperor embodies. This man is law and experience combined. He knows that the answers to all questions rest upon truth. In the Death card, this grounded and foundational energy manifests in a slightly different way. It offers fundamental and often permanent changes to the elemental parameters of life itself. Its core meaning is of something that has been a key part of life coming to an end or changing in a significant way. The death card rarely means actual physical death. It refers to basic issues and the shifts that take place within those basic structures. Thus, although the tone is darker, death grows from the same root as the Emperor, and both figures are equally respected and perhaps even slightly feared because of the ultimate authority they both symbolize. However, upon taking a closer look at that, the pure white horse he rides is actually a comment on clear and clean energy. Further, the sun is on the rise in the distant sky, so this is not an ending as we think of it. Rather, it's the beginning of something else, something that we may not be familiar with, but which holds the promise of a new day, one that comes after experiencing a few dark nights. Note also that the horse has four legs, referring again to stability and solidity, but on the move, so change and movement, but nevertheless a grounding presence. There is a solid, permanent change to the foundations. The death card is number 13, which is considered an unlucky number in the West, but in marked contrast, the ancient Egyptians revered and respected this number. To them, it was holy and referred to eternity. The Egyptians believed that ascension involved a ladder to heaven that consisted of 13 rungs. This being the final step taken in order to reach immortality, which of course was much desired and therefore worth the work required to get there. Its presence indicates the need to settle one's dues, no matter how difficult, before the final step up the ladder can be taken. This is an almost perfect example of finding the positive in the negative. By clearing old depth, we are able to move on and up and into spiritual cleanliness, rebirth, and enlightenment. One final comment on the number 4 here. The Emperor is number 4 and Death is number 13, which adds up to 4. And it's important to note that 4 can also refer to the 4 prime elements of existence. Our physical bodies, money, and career, this is the suit of pentacles. Our spirit, ability to create, passion, and intensity, this is the suit of wands. Our emotions, their consequences and rewards, this is the cups. And our thoughts and words, what we do with them and how they affect those around us, and this is the suit of the swords. The sturdy and grounded number 4 is the very foundation upon which the entire spiritual divination system rests. The Hierophant is usually regarded as a powerful and sometimes religious figure who exerts tremendous influence over a large group of people. He can be read as the saving grace, the one who provides proper law and tradition in order to maintain and sustain control over the various characters and personalities under his domain. But more than that, the Hierophant, just like the number 5 on top, provides balance and support in times of crisis. It's a card for tradition, stability, security, and established ways. The Hierophant acts as the speaker of the house. He leads the masses and lays down the divine order to counterbalance chaos, to offset the chaos created by excessive individualism or egoism. He provides commonality to offset the separation that would happen if excessive individualism takes place. The number 5, just like the sun sign of Leo and the 5th house in astrology, refers to excessive individualism, to going your own way, doing things your own way, not particularly concerned with what would be seen as traditional or proper, indulging in hobbies, indulging in vices, having fun. None of these things are negative, but if they are taken to extreme, they could lead to the collapse of society, to the collapse of commonality, because everyone becomes overly individualized. And so the Hierophant, just like the pentagram, provides that top point that connects all of the other elements, provides balance, offsets the fact that if allowed to go their own way, everybody would start pulling in opposite, completely different directions, and the whole structure, in this case society, would collapse. The Temperance card also refers to the need for balance, but while the Hierophant is balance for the masses and for society at large, Temperance holds a more intimate and personal message. It is aimed at the individual and usually points to the need to restore balance in one's own life. It references moderation, especially after sensory overload, healing, and taking time out to connect with spirit. This can be seen as an indication of a spiritual awakening that will result in a smoother progression and calmer attitude in general. This card is very philosophical and its message is gentle yet firm. It says regroup and rethink one's actions and habits before all balance is lost. Both Temperance and the Hierophant offer calm in the face of potential chaos. The card of the Lovers pertains to love, sex, trust, family, and happy homes. However, there is another level to this card, and it is one of choice. Do we go home to safety, or do we take the hand of the adventurer and follow them wherever that may take us? This particular image illustrates how strongly body language can speak. The woman who stands beside the tree of life, complete with a serpent which she is almost touching, symbolism easily recognizable as temptation. This woman reaches out her hand to the man, but he is not receptive. His eyes are downcast, one hand pulled back behind his tide, while the other plays open as if to say, "Wait, I'm not quite sure about this." While they're both naked, they are not touching or joining, nor do they look as though they might. However, we don't know, the decision has not yet been made. So while this card refers to intimate actions and even fruitful procreations, it can also point to illicit affairs and emotionally damaging or destructive relationships, intimate or business. The choice belongs to the participants, and it boils down to staying in the safe zone or taking the hand offered. This card represents choice, but it represents choice created by temptation. And we see the Lovers again in the Devil card. This card is the actuality, the materialization of the temptation, and portrays the negative side. This is the card of negative desires or forces, which manifest as thoughts, habits, decisions, and actions, like succumbing to the lure of drugs, alcohol, extramarital affairs, and of all kinds of other sensory-based stimulants. And the changes that follow, which can include everything from broken trust to the devastation of relationships, homes, marriages, and lives. This card speaks to the potential loss of domestic security, tranquility, and safety. The thing about this card and its message is that it also contains choice. Have a look at the chains around the necks of these two figures. In other illustrations, these chains are pictured as easily removable. This deck portrays the couple as more bound than others, but their chains are still relatively loose, which suggests that with a little bit of work, one or both could escape if they truly wanted to. The devil doesn't keep them bound, they themselves do. Two alternatives are on offer here: remain confined and chained and face the consequences, or break the habit using whichever means necessary to return to a place of safety and security. Very often, this card concerns a choice between something that is loved, a drug, a job, or even a hobby, versus someone who is loved, a mistress, a wife, a sibling, anyone else. Therein lies the challenge in the choice. The Chariot points to the battle of balance between intuition and intellect, between empirical evidence-based decisions and the subtle talent of grasping the unseen. If one looks carefully at the sphinxes who will lead the chariot, it's clear that instead of facing us straight on, each is headed in a slightly outward direction, which means that any forward movement will result in a stalemate. Neither creature will move. One black, the other one white. This also is reflective of positive and negative forces. The failure of intent goes back to incomplete considerations. Another aspect of the chariot is that it was used in ancient battle situations, and a large part of winning was in intuiting the enemy's next move and planning a countermove. Hence, the chariot points to the combined use of the intuition and the intellect as being the most effective method towards achieving success. This card shows up to remind you that success depends on maintaining a firm hold over polar opposites and not allowing any of the extremes to take dominance. Alternatively, it can also refer to a moment when one wonders if they should investigate the hidden matters of the universe or stay above the ground in the visible spectrum of existence. The card is number 7, and this number's energy has mystical and occult connotations. We are all familiar with the idea that God made the world and then rested on the seventh day. We gaze in wonder upon the 7 colors of the rainbow, work on balancing the 7 chakra centers in our bodies, look forward to certain of the 7 days in a week, and enjoy trying to express ourselves using the 7 notes on the scale of a piano. We cross the 7 seas and search the skies for the elusive seventh heaven, but we are more likely feeling the 7-year itch even as we catalog the 7 deadly sins and count how many of the 7 virtues we may still have. And then we break a mirror and speculate for just a moment about the 7 years of bad luck often attached to such event. Speaking of luck, those familiar with knot magic will know that 7 knots are used for spell binding and that incarnations are often repeated 7 times. And lastly, the alchemists want to create gold, and this goal involves 7 metals. The tarot card of the Tower can appear somewhat intimidating in that it pictures an exploding tower, flames, bodies falling, and lightning flashing. Not surprisingly, it indicates that all is not as it appears to be and that disruption and upheaval are occurring or imminent. It's usually reflective of family, close connections, and intimate dealings that essentially all of a sudden blow up. But the outer circumstances are the result of inner thoughts. The presence of misguided or wrong thinking has successfully, up until now, covered the truth of the situation. These thought patterns involve lying to the self, explaining away that which does not fit, chastising the self for doubting, out talking the intuition, and generally avoiding reality and reality checks. The truth has been submersed and ignored for so long that sudden revelations can cause life-changing explosions and the destruction of what we had previously lived with. However, there is a positive, and in this case, the Tower allows toxic energies to burn up and blow away, leaving a calm, even if drained, feeling of peace in its wake. From there, a new life can be built. The common thread running between the Chariot and the Tower is that of inner and outer realities, and how balance depends upon ensuring the two realities are aligned. If the brain has been suppressing the intuition for too long, ignoring the messages and turning a blind eye to the hints will result in the Tower. But if one takes the other road and allows emotions to take over reason, the result is the equally disastrous falling off the Chariot. The Strength card refers to power and control. It talks about having the courage and resolve to acknowledge and calm one's own inner beasts, thereby gaining control over personal emotions and reactions. So while this image shows a lady calming the lion, this message actually refers to controlling the self, both through attaining high levels of self-acceptance, faith, peace, and compassion within the soul, and by being able to calm others as a result. This is why the young lady pictured here is able to place her hands near the mouth of the lion and not lose it. She is balanced in body, mind, and spirit and knows no fear, which is shown in the infinity symbol floating above her head. This lack of fear and her inner serenity is sensed by the lion she strokes and affects him accordingly. The number 8 is formed by 2 zeros, one atop the other, and represents the symbol of infinity and perfect balance, which is echoed in the element of yin and yang, masculine, feminine, and as above, so below, as within, so without. It is a symbol found on several tarot cards such as the Magician, Strength, and the World. The Star card has a similar message to achieve ideal balance and the gift of serenity and acceptance. The sub-message of this card is that once complete symmetry between the spiritual and material worlds has been reached, thoughts and dreams can become real. In a way, this card connects to the law of attraction in that how thoughts are formed and projected can dictate your circumstances, surroundings, and even the events of your life. This card is representative of the actuality of reaching a place of acceptance and perfect balance, which is shown in the woman's stance. One knee is firmly planted on the grass, while the other foot rests in the water. Further, she carries two jugs of equal size and is pouring water both onto the land and into the water. The perfect balance between matter and purity of spirit, so earth and water, has been reached and is being tended by the woman. Realizing that the worlds of spirit and matter are equal in strength often ushers in a time of dreams coming true. Both of these cards speak about gaining control and power over external circumstances by first gaining control and power of your inner self, attaining inner serenity, and then projecting that outward in order to attract favorable circumstances. The Hermit revolves around beginnings and endings and the roads taken or not taken. The Hermit is a loner. By choice, he removes himself from his involvement with the normal trappings of life and society and withdraws to begin considerations of his own spirit and how to connect to universal energies. In this image, he is depicted as traversing a rather barren landscape while holding a lantern to illuminate his path, which is a metaphor for his soul's journey. While in other cards he is shown as living in a tall tower on a distant hill where he devotes himself to introspection and the search for metaphysical and spiritual knowledge. No matter where the hermit is found, he is the ideal example of ending one connection with the material and with society and beginning another with himself and the universe. When it refers to a person, the hermits are relatively rare folks who have learned the lessons of their lives, accepted and integrated them, and who are now ready to move on. They radiate an inner peace and tolerance, which is the energy we respond to as it reflects the peace we all wish for ourselves. You might notice that the card is number 9. Jesus totals to 18, which totals 9. Christ totals to 18, which totals 9. The two names together, Jesus Christ, total to 36, which totals to 9. The moon card, also number 18, illustrates the theme of beginning and endings as well. The moon itself appears and disappears with regularity, but it is never really gone, as it is tied to the sun for life. Further, as it is illustrative of our journey from point A to point B, or from life to death, it also shows the various distractions, beginnings and endings we must deal with along the way. In this illustration, the dog seems poised to provide at least some of these distractions and even obstacles. The moon is illuminating and shadow casting at the same time. Therefore, its connections to the intuition and psychic impressions are emphasized. This card clearly shows the start of the long road that passes through two columns, positive and negative experiences and reality versus illusion. And this is a road we all have to travel if we wish to find out what lies at its end. Both cards refer to the bigger picture. Sometimes we have to walk away from active life and engage in contemplation in order to see the bigger picture. But then when the time comes, we have to re-enter active life and keep in mind that earthly existence will be filled with many beginnings and endings, but many of these will be simple distractions on a longer journey. After this video, I wanted to share some observations on the Chaldean interpretation of the tarot. The thing that stood out for me most was just how much focus and attention this interpretation, this take on a major arcana, places on duality and opposition and the importance of being able to hold oppositions together and understanding that everything that we come across, everyone that we come across, everything that happens to us lies somewhere at the intersection of several scales. So a scale is when, for example, you have this, and then this is one extreme and this is the other extreme. And so everything that we do falls somewhere. It could be the balance, but it could be too much to here, too much to there. And then we have several of these kind of interlocked and kind of like called here's, or here, or here. So you have several pens, for example. And so this event that just happened in your life is kind of like on the scale from hot to cold, it's here. But then it also involves some light and dark, for example. And so on the scale from light to dark, it's actually here. And so this event that happened to you is at the intersection of one pen here and the other one taken and put here. You know what I mean? I'll try to put a kind of like a graph to illustrate it better. But basically, I think that it kind of, the Chaldean interpretation starts with the unquestioned assumption and presumption that everything in life is a question of balance and measure, and kind of being able to really hold polar energies together and to really strike the good balance between different needs and different ideas. So that's interesting because I've read a lot of different interpretations about the major arcana, and I've never met a version that's so much focused on how many dualities and oppositions, and it's not so much about the extremes, but rather about the continuum between the extremes, and how, in a sense, you can see everything as falling somewhere on 1, 2, 3 or more continuums of things. And because this idea is so clearly underlined in the entire interpretation, I thought it was interesting, and it really betrays not only a very different interpretation of the cards of the major arcana, but it just seems that this interpretation is a result of a very consistent but also very different way of seeing all of reality, everything that happens to us, seeing it again as the intersection of several continuums. And that's why I thought I make this video and share it. So let me know what are your comments, what are your thoughts and reflections on this interpretation of the major arcana.